Media.
And thanks to everyone present. Prof, maybe to preface my answer, I must acknowledge the debates that happened in this room in the previous lecture. This kind of passion, this is the passion that is needed from Africans if they want to achieve Agenda 2063. I think, Prof, you've got a very great audience, and I think there is still hope for Africa in as far as issue of media is concerned. Prof, the question that you are posing is not an easy one to answer, but to make things easy for us so that we can be able to understand is that the issue of digital media is not really a new concept. But it's something that, you know, Africans in particular need to use it to their advantage. And I think for too long we've ignored, Prof, I think two things. One, we as Africans, we have not invested much on media infrastructure. But most importantly, Prof, we have not taken the time to train, you know, especially the diplomats, on how to use media to the advantage of their countries. Now, Prof, you will understand that generally the issue of diplomats has always been conducted beyond closed doors. It has never been a thing that is out in the open. But now we have seen most recently, especially with the election of Donald Trump, I think there is a platform that he created called Truth Social. Yeah. And I'm saying this, Prof, because those are kind of information, you know, that you need to put it there to influence public opinion, but also to engage other countries on your interest, on your programs, or on cooperation and many other things. And I think Africa has got a very, very big responsibility in using digital media to their advantage. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm Dr. Madondo. Doctor, yes. Thank you very much. Prof is a bigger title.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you very much. So let me hand over to Prof Manja to unpack what he has for us.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Elvis. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm being, you rushed me. I thought you were going to break for tea. So you caught me completely disorganized, but it's fine. Good morning, colleagues, and good to see you. I greet you in the name of Bafana Bafana tonight. So I think this topic is very important for me for the following reason, that absolutely no doubt that there is a serious potential, the power of potential of media diplomacy in our continent. I think that's a very important point. And I think if we can just latch on a bit from what Admire was talking about in his previous presentation, I think for me, in debating this question, one of the things that at some point we have to talk about as Africans is the integration of Africa. We sit here and talk about all manner of things and use colonial concepts such as sub-Sahara Africa, as if Africa is not one, for example. So those are some of the things that we must talk about, because in my view, it's very clear that Africa is a very rich, resource-rich continent. It will not be able to achieve its true potential if we do not integrate and unite it. But having said that, I think the advent of the huge digital uptake in the African continent presents itself obvious opportunities. The digital penetration opportunities to use soft power to build diplomacy. And I think for me, that is just the starting point that we must talk about as African, and how do we use it for our own development. Because at the heart of any form of diplomacy is about the developmental agenda to ensure that you deliver to the people, or Africa is able to self-sustain itself and become a better continent. And I think that digital diplomacy gives us that opportunity. The number of examples that were used here earlier on, Elvis, about the Trump, for example, I think that if it wasn't for the ability to use digital platforms to debunk some of the myths, some of the misinformation and disinformation that were peddled at the White House or at the Oval Office by Trump, would not have been able to, to push back. So I think that digital diplomacy gives us a huge opportunity as Africans to advance our own agenda, Agenda 2063.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's clap hands for them. Yeah, it's a good culture to clap hands after any meaningful contribution, right? And let's unfreeze a bit. I think the public lecture took us too emotional and we are too serious, right? So let's unfreeze a bit. It's a happy session, right? So let's enjoy the session and let's smile where necessary and share jokes where necessary in the process. So thank you very much, the panel, for the wonderful contribution. So you mentioned the potential of this digital media, but it has been around for quite some time. We cannot continue talking about the potential before we point some achievements so far. What is the current state with regards to this digital diplomacy in advancing Africa's agenda? Is there something meaningful happening, or it's not yet contributing? Is there any value that is coming from the digital media already? Yes, can you unpick that for us?
Look, my view is that the advent of the digital diplomas has, in a way, benefited Africa. And I'm saying this, Doc, because, for too long, there's been an issue about democratization of the media. And I think the advent of the digital media has, digital diplomas have assisted to actually democratize the diplomas, in the sense that now it is no longer, necessary to wait for government to inform citizens or other countries about what is happening in their countries. There's a bit of a risk there, because sometimes the information that is shared it can be misinformation, or what they call it disinformation. But what is important is that now there's other players other than government that are involved in sharing information. And that on its own, it ensures that there is a level of transparency in terms of the information sharing, but also it ensures that the information is made available in real time. Because some government, for many reasons, they withhold information, they don't want to share it, and sometimes to the disadvantages of those countries. So I think democratization of the diplomacy has been a benefit through the digitalization of media digitalization. Thank you.
Sure. Let's clap hands for him. Over to you, Prof.
Fully agree that definitely it brings both opportunities and challenges. If you look at some of the opportunities, is that we as the continent are a very young continent, with a very youthful demographics that is highly actively engaged on these platforms. So this, what it then has done for a number of states, is to enable a number of role players to be able to effectively engage with this audience through media diplomacy to focus, for example, on youth-centric messages. Definitely no doubt about it. In the era of crisis communication, for example, think about COVID-19. That during COVID-19, I think South Africa was by far the most adversely affected country. There were opportunities by the government to use digital platforms to manage the crisis, and I think governments are therefore able to ensure that they are able to navigate disasters more effectively during this era. But also what I've seen about how the South African government has used this, and I want to assume that other African states, they do the same on engaging what I will call diaspora diplomacy, engaging with expatriates from the South African point of view to mobilize them. In South Africa, there's a huge campaign called Homecoming, for example, that has been, the government has been able to leverage on these platforms to engage. But of course, we are in Africa, and we must appreciate the fact that there's a huge challenges around the issues of digital divide. And therefore, if you want to talk about the benefits, you must appreciate that the benefits must be understood at the material level. And unfortunately, we cannot separate digital platforms from the reality of what is happening at the material level. I think it was Atmaya again was speaking about, for example, the ownership and the controls of these platforms that we're using for digital diplomacy, that these are the platforms that are controlled at the Silicon Valley. So what happens is that the data that we then deposit in these platforms get controlled and owned by these. So those are some of the downsides of it. Issues of cyber security are some of the bigger issues that we must also worry about when we think about some of the strides that have been made. It's a huge challenge. And I argue somewhere that if you think about the low voter turnout in South Africa's last year's election, you cannot sort of dissociate that from cybersecurity, misinformation, and disinformation. Because we are at a stage where we sometimes can no longer distinguish from what is true and what is not true on these platforms. So some of the successes have come with those challenges. But lastly, in my view, I think not that withstanding, I think regional integration, for example, from the Southern African states, what is called SADC, you see a lot of digital diplomacy from that perspective, which is useful to strengthening our collective voice from international platforms as African using digital platforms.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's clap hands for you. Good. So we have seen from the other slide shared during the public lecture that the dominant broadcasting television channels are outside of Africa and controlled outside of Africa, but digital media give us some tools to do something on our own. Digital tools empowers everyone, okay? So as Africa, are we doing enough to use the digital platforms to drive our agenda? Or the efforts are just fragmented, individuals are doing their own things as individuals? Why don't we have some continental integration or platforms that are continental on the digital platform? What I see, maybe I might be wrong, what I see are fragmented efforts, individual efforts, people trying to do their own things. But that won't make enough impact compared to when there is continental integration of some sort. So what do you think about that? Why don't we have some continental integration on digital platforms that can help us drive our own agenda?
Well, if I can start.
Yes.
It can be true, Elvis, that digital platforms, they give us an opportunity. I think they are similar to the traditional media. They move on the basis of the imperialist ideas. So there's a concept of media imperialism, and I think that concept certainly applies on digital, has migrated to digital platform, so we can call it digital imperialism. In other words, the hard tools, the tools that are used to communicate through digital platform are still not owned by Africans. It's a point I was making, that these tools and their algorithms are designed in Silicon Valley and are designed by the people in Silicon Valley for their own agendas. If you look at the most used social media platform in South Africa, it's WhatsApp and Meta platforms, Facebook. Those tools are controlled. I mean, if you have a problem with Facebook, for example, you'll not be able to even lay a complaint because you won't know who to complain to and how to complain. So even if they can talk about moderation, and moderation works in the global north, and that is why the colleagues in the EU have been able to make some inroads in ensuring that there is regulation of some sort of these platforms.
Okay.
But from the African point of view, it's not possible, because you're correct, because of the lack of integration. I mean, how do you expect a country, let's speak on Lesotho, because they are here and we beat them 3-0 the other day. And they are part of South Africa. How do you expect Lesotho to negotiate with Meta? It's a tiny country. I mean, even South Africa is unable to do that. Okay. I mean, I know that that is why countries such as Ethiopia, for example, will resort to internet shutdown, because sometimes there is a reason to do that, precisely because we don't own those platforms. So I think the material base, the financial muscle to control and own this platform remains a problem, just like it is a problem. So just like CNN, the CNN effect that Admire was talking about, that frames and sets the tone and the agenda of what we see, what they.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. And about what is happening in that particular body. And I'm saying if we don't hold our leaders accountable, we will forever be crying of non-service to the people of Africa. So it is upon us as journalists, as media personnel, as government, that we constantly engage these bodies, demand, because we are representing the people. People expect us to give them information, because it is when they have got information that they can make decisions. But if these bodies exist for the sake of existing, and we as journalists, as a media, we don't push them, and we must never get tired of pushing them. Because if we push them and we demand, for instance, I mean, the basic strategy on digital media in Africa, I don't think that document exists. Even if it exists, I don't think that there are proper action plan to ensure that it comes to life, to make sure that tomorrow we have great Africa, like we see America. I mean, if you look at America, they speak about great America, their dream. But they don't only speak about that as a slogan. They are doing something about it. And I'm not saying let's copy what America is doing. We are thinkers here. We know what works for Africa. But I think we are having leaders that are dragging for their feet for one reason or the other, that sometimes I feel that they're selfish because they don't think about the future. I mean, for instance, we've got Vision 2063. But between now and then, what is happening? Are there any programs tangible that will impact, that will change our society? The answer is no. And I think it's up to us bringing those things up so that they can start to act on them. If it means we must irritate them, let's irritate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tembela. What I'm picking up is that the lamenting fatigue with the traditional media is continuing even with the digital media. Is that so? With the digital media, I think from the end user perspective, I think it empowered us in a number of ways. Do we really feel empowered, or we still feel restricted? I think there is some empowerment that's happening that we are not harnessing, that we are not using. So my other question is that now, as Africans, are we doing enough to challenge all that which has been happening? Are we doing enough to promote our own agenda, or we are now folding our hands and point fingers instead of doing something? Do you think Africans, as Africans, we are doing enough, or we're also even pointing on digital media to say it's not good platforms enough?
Can I
Yes.
go first? You see, Doc, there is something that we must also realize, that, these platforms or these digital tools are very important to advance our lives.
Yes.
But if you just throw me with these gadgets and not train me how to use it for the benefit of myself and society, is a problem. In South Africa, I think around 2021, we had a very big, riot in the country.
Yes.
And many people will tell you that part of that riot, people died there. It's called July riot. Because of many South Africans using these platforms recklessly. But also lack of education from the recipients. Because people, as Prof. Mandla was saying, sometimes we have these gadgets, but we don't know how to use them.
Okay.
And if we are using them wrongly, it's a problem. So I think Africa must also invest in the education of digital media.
Okay.
Because if we don't invest them, we won't even know what's the difference between authentic information and bogus information. So, and obviously some people use that information, rely on them, and they think that it's the right thing to do, and then they act on them. So I think it's important that we, as African countries, take a decision that there must be a rollout of an education, even at school level. Because now for instance, I've got children, 2 daughters and 2 boys. I've understood that one day my daughter was sleeping late, only to find out after studying, which is allowed, she then smugly from reading to TikTok, and she doesn't sleep at night. When she's supposed to wake up tomorrow to go to school, she can't go to school because she's tired. So I'm saying we must start educating our children, we must start educating communities, because we must be honest that the level of literacy in Africa is not at the level where we want it to be. So if we ignore that, we might have these tools, but they are dangerous, and we can be the victims of the same progress that we want to achieve. Thank you.
All right. Depends for him. Over to you, Prof.
Well, I think I'm really agreeing with the perspectives that are raised. I think one of the biggest things for me to think about digital platforms and in the context of digital diplomacy, I think Africans are doing all they can to develop and improve their lives. So absolutely, I have no doubt about that. But we have to understand the tools that are at our disposals, that these are not our tools. We have to think about how data is being colonized. In the Silicon Valley, or in the US, they are building huge servers to keep our data as Africans. because the data is a new currency, is a new oil. It's very important for them. And for me, that's where we must have a conversation as Africans that when you go to China, you are confronted by a big firewall of China the moment you land. Your WhatsApp won't work there. Because they've got their tools that they use to advance their own agenda as Chinese. I mean, I think I was laughing when I was making this point that Africans were the only continent that get called by everyone, including the Italians will call us. Italy, Africa Summit, and all the head of states will go there. Precisely because we don't have our own agenda, we don't develop our own tools to drive our own agenda. So my view is that while we can celebrate, because I don't think that we should also just valorize these tools. These tools are there. I mean, when you think about the concept of the fourth industrial revolution, you must appreciate that these are the tools that are just for that, the development and the accumulation of wealth for those who design and develop those tools. Just like the first industrial revolution did, whether it was a steam engine, it was designed to accumulate on behalf of themselves. So these tools are designed for that. They are not designed to help Africans to make their lives better and to have better diplomacy. They are designed by the people who are designing them for their own, and that is why I'm saying Africa and Africans at some point must pause and think about the tools that we must design for ourselves, for our own agenda, including tools that will understand and speak our own languages. So for me, yes, while we must talk about digital diplomacy and how we use these digital tools, very important, but at some point we must understand that at the heart of these tools is a particular agenda, and that agenda is decisively not African.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Let's clap hands for you. Good. So it seems like we have some challenges to tackle. That's where innovation comes in. When you are faced with a problem, you have to do something about it. Come up with ideas, be innovative, and bring in something new. Bring better processes, better platforms. All right, others are still thinking about their question. You can go ahead.
Prof, create. And how do we go about it?
That was the first AI that was developed so quickly and so cheap. I suppose the Chinese do have the resources and to do that. We are in the same boat, so I don't think we should feel bad as Africans that we are not developing enough platforms, but we are consuming. Because the Europeans, at least in this situation, they are in the same boat as us. Because they are being subjected to this platform, the Silicon Valley. But what they've done, they've been smart about it. That as EU, they've sat around and say and devise ways and means to deal with the situation. And one of them is to regulate. So if you look at the EU regulations policies on the safe use of these platforms, is very important. That, okay, we admit that we don't have the tools for now to interact with the world through digital platforms. So we're going to use the American tools, but in doing so, we are going to regulate them so that they can respond to our needs as Europeans. I think this is what some of the thinking that as Africans we must begin to think about. These are not our tools. They are designed for the particular agenda. But now that they are here, 99% of them on your phone are American. How do we ensure that we regulate them so that your child does not sleep at night at 1 a.m. Hooked on TikTok, which is designed like a slot machine that we are just there for hours, not being productive, right? So how do we ensure that we we create the guardrails that are going to ensure that they, at least for now that they are here, we use them for our own interest as African. I think that's, for me, that's how we should think about it.
Can I add?
Okay, yes.
Also, there's been obsession in African governments about the issue of poverty alleviation, which for me is very important. But I think we are overdoing it. I think African Union must have a strategy, and part of the strategy is to create an alternative platform. Because I don't believe that we don't have resources to have an alternative platform. But there is no will from African leaders to create that platform. But for now, I agree, we should be using what we're having, but with the aim or with a long-term vision or objective to have our own things as Africa, create our own markets, create our own platforms, and stop taking, I mean, for instance, in South Africa, with the issue of having a budget that almost everything goes to poverty alleviation programs. Nothing talks about, innovation, digital. And I'm saying we should have a situation where we also put resources in place to invest in these digital technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's leave that for them. Right, let's have more questions. For the first time, we do not have so many questions. We need the questions.
It's time for tea.
All right, we have rightfully said so. Thank you very much for the interactive session, and let's use the platform that we have. Let's go and use them. I heard that 99% of them are American. It's not an entirely bad thing, right? Let's take advantage of the platforms and use them and drive our own agenda, share our own narratives, share our own stories. I think we will go far. Africa is rich and beautiful. Thank you very much. We are one, and let's continue the same spirit. That's all from the session chair. Thank you, the panel. Thank
Right,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it once more for this amazing panel. Thank you so much, Temilani Mpakati.
Yes.
I'm losing you now, I'm losing you. What's going on? Professor Ratebe. And of course, to our amazing chair, Dr. Madondo. All right, so what we want to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is that we want to take a quick, short comfort break just before we jump on to the next session. So we have got 15 minutes between now and the next session. So I think 15 minutes is just about enough for us to go outside, stretch our legs, use the facilities, drink water, and then come back. So I ask that we please make our way back to the venue at exactly 11:30. So 11:30. Thank you.